Well, I'm just going to make this quick intro because I want to get to this subject. I'm sitting here, well, sitting at a distance from Sean Power, who is the co-founder of Musical AI. It's an enterprise-grade attribution AI music at scale. It's a big company that's starting from scratch, and we're seeing more and more AI. And we're just going to let you talk about your AI company for a few minutes before we dig into you.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy to, and yeah, I think we're doing something that's really important for the world of AI. And there seem to be a lot of companies on, in all sides of the sector that seem to be agreeing with us. We're an attribution company. And so basically what we've done is that we've invented an algorithm where we can mathematically determine the impact of the inputs that a model is trained on the outputs that a model generates. So let's say you have like an AI model that, I don't know, is putting out music or video. We'll go with music for now. And so you have a user who's subscribed to a platform that generates music. And when that user goes and puts in a prompt, the AI model generates audio, right? It generates a song. And it turns out, like, we all know this like deep down inside. We know that AI is just a statistical predictor algorithm, right? But like I guess general statistical prediction doesn't sound as sexy as artificial intelligence, but that's really all it is. It's predicting what a thing should sound like, and then it makes a slice, and then it predicts what the next slice should be. And so you've got that user, and they've generated a song. That song is influenced by whatever the model trained on. And the model probably trained on 1 million songs, 2 million songs, and so on. Our algorithm mathematically determines which song it is that influences it. And it's wild because when you kind of listen to the outputs and you listen to the influencers of the output, you can just hear it. You can hear like, oh, it's that song. Wait, actually, it actually literally took that melody line, or it took that sound, right? The sound of, like, I don't know, a flute or a thing or whatever. And then it just kind of, decided to change it in some way and alter it. And so it's possible to be able to determine these things. And it's not rocket science to be able to do it either. And so the reason for our existence is that we help AI companies pay back the copyright holders that they've trained on. And in doing so, it, protects them from litigation. It helps them be good players in an ecosystem that they might want to participate in. And it builds trust with copyrights holders who might be more willing to help those AI companies train on maybe private content that isn't normally available through public means. And so all of those things become really important. But the first one is the one that I think matters a lot these days. Making sure that companies aren't getting sued is something that's extremely, extremely important and topical in the world of AI music and the world of AI video, because there are lawsuits everywhere, right? And just last week, something that we've been saying was going to happen for 2 years happened. Universal Music Group have settled with Udio, the second largest AI company in the world, and have settled with Stability and have created licensing deals. And in those licensing deals, there are words that specifically, explicitly state that attribution is going to be a part of that ecosystem. And then it was just a couple of days ago that Udio, the largest music AI company in the world, has settled with Warner Music. And again, our understanding is that there will be attribution that is going to be baked into the future in those products to ensure that the artists who are powering the great, cool stuff that Suno and Udio are doing are getting paid.
I think we've seen all of this in the past, and we're seeing this in a different way today. How can you explain the difference between copy of music or even video, as you're mentioning?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like there have been a lot of precedents in music of the concept of copyright being placed under threat. I guess threat really depends on who you're speaking with, but certainly being tested, being stress tested in some ways. Think of like, for those of us that had Napster, skipping school so that we could Napster all day and download all of this music. We were that generation that got access to an unlimited amount of music at a time where that just wasn't possible. It didn't exist. And from a copyright perspective, this was a fundamental threat to what copyright meant to music. And the music industry, of course, they rallied around what their beliefs were, and they were able to make that belief a reality. And then it happened again in streaming. Through before, like with Napster, it was just downloading things to your computer, but then the torrents happened, and then you were streaming things to your computer. You didn't even need to have it on your box, right? And so there's one streaming or one pirate company in particular that ended up becoming what is now called Spotify. It's like a wild part of their history that they don't often talk about, but certainly is true. And again, the music industry, when it came to copyright, like the whole ecosystem was stress tested, and the music industry rallied around what their beliefs were, and they made that belief a reality. And so our company is not a music company at all. We are an infrastructure company, and we decided to serve music first because we knew that music, just like if you take a look at the history of the last 40 years, the music industry was going to be the first industry to understand the stressors on copyright and to do something about it. And just in the last couple of weeks, they've shown us once again that they are the tip of the spear when it comes to stress tests on copyrights.
So we're talking to, since we're, this is a mass media conversation, for an end user, what does that mean that, that we're seeing more and more attribution? And I think that we should see more and more attribution for music or other forms of creative input. But what does that actually mean for the user that is consuming the content?
Well, it's complicated. And to make this very, very short and high level, I think for that user, more and more, they will at least have the understanding that when they are creating things or collaborating with AI, that those AI systems are recognizing the people that they trained on. And I don't know about you, but for me, that feels really good. That's something that I want. And in fact, given two AI systems that are the same, one AI system that was trained on pirated content and one AI system that's licensing content, even if that second AI system was a little bit more expensive, I would never work with the system that was pirating content. If I'm given the choice, I want humanity to be paid for their contributions to AI. And so I think that users will more and more have those options available to them, which is fantastic. And I think secondly, for those of us who have had content that was trained on without consent, and so for me, there have been a couple of models, OpenAI's model, Anthropic's model that's trained on books that I've written. I think that for those of us in that position, we are more likely to see revenue as a result of that content being trained. Yeah. And so that represents a smaller portion of users. Users at large, I think, will benefit from knowing over time, like, oh, this was influenced by, this corpus of people or this group of artists, intellectuals, whatever it is. And then for a subset of those users, some of us will get paid.
Sean, I've always, since we've known each other, music has been a big part of your life. And you've been, a part of the board for, do you remember, can you remind me the name of the festival that you were?
Decibel Festival.
Pardon me, say that again?
Decibel Festival.
Decibel, yes. And so for you, I think that this aspect of music and attribution is very close to your heart because of your proximity and stuff like that. But tell me, when did that start? When did that love for music start? Where did that, business acumen start with it? I'm sure that, they were really close together for many years.
Well, I don't know about business acumen. I think it took me a long time to even understand what a business was. I was running companies before I knew that I was running
Okay,
companies.
that's I was like, okay, like I'm sure that you just you've been in business for a long time. Okay.
I have, but I don't think that like it wasn't until in 2005, 2006 when I joined Coradiant, that was co-founded by Eric Packman and Alistair Kroll that I really understood what a business actually was. And because I'd never gone to school, and so I just viewed it as like, hey, look, I got a big paycheck this month, or like, boo, I didn't get a big paycheck, this month, and I didn't really understand kind of like the concept of what I was doing. I was just doing it as a means for survival, and so 'cause I guess like for your audience, I never graduated high school, and I left home fairly early, and so working on companies was the only way that I knew how to put food on the table, because I didn't have a high school diploma, and back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, high school or university degrees really meant something different than I think they mean today. And so someone that didn't have a high school diploma usually it meant something to whoever the hiring person was, and that thing wasn't positive. And so nobody would hire me. So anyways, I guess like to answer your question, going back to then, I was doing mostly music when I was young. And when I wasn't doing music and when I was working on tech stuff, I didn't really understand what that meant. But then I joined a real startup, and that contextualized a lot of things. And in my last two companies, I think I now have the maturity and the understanding to work in fields that I love, like that means so, so, so much to me, and not have my efforts, whether positive or negative, taint or poison the thing that I love. And so I think like I started work. I've always been working with, around, or having music as a part of my life. But this is the first kind of like company where I'm speaking with the largest, rights holders in the world, or maybe some of the more or the most popular musicians in the world. And that feels good. But it feels like I can, at this point in my life, I can work with them from a place of maturity and understanding that seems to be working well.
As just a general understanding, when you're saying, I finally understand what it is to build a real company, or, or I worked with a real startup. And what's the difference between, playing a startup and working in a real startup? What were the elements that like if somebody doesn't know?
Yeah, Randy Smerrick has one of the best presentations when it comes to startups that I've ever seen in my entire career, called Built to be Bought. Randy was one of the first investor in Coradiant, which was Alistair's startup in 2005, of which I was a part of. And the presentation Built to be Bought talks about kind of like that businesses have basically 4 business outcomes, and that's about it. You either fail as a business, you create a lifestyle business that just kind of like grows month over month. You sell your business through some kind of merger or acquisition, or you IPO. And statistically speaking, those that sell their businesses tend to sell businesses that inherently have scale. And scale is a word that has a lot of connotations. All of those things that I just talked about in the last 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever it was, I just had no understanding of what any of those words meant when I started business. I had no understanding what scale meant. In fact, I'd argue that still today, I'm still in the process of understanding scale. I'm in the process of understanding the different types of scale and when they're appropriate and when they're not appropriate for a business. And so I think that there are these kind of fundamental levers that exist in each of those states of companies that go in IPO, companies that go and sell, companies that are lifestyle businesses, companies that fail, that all have kind of very, we're talking about an AI world, that have probabilities where you can kind of predict what's going to happen. Oh, our business is going to fail because of all of these indicators, right? maybe when I said my business is going to fail, what I'm actually saying is there's an over 75% chance that in the next 6 months, our business will fail because of indicator A, B, and C. There are all of these predictors that show that you've got yourself a lifestyle business, you've got yourself an acquirable business, and so on. And I didn't know any of those things in my first few companies. I didn't understand that they existed. I didn't understand what they meant. If I were to talk to a young Sean 25 years ago, working on his first business, I don't think I would have understood a word of what I'm talking about today. I would have looked at myself and been like, what are you talking about?
So I'm guessing, like, so would you say that you're being pushed out of your comfort zone in building this for yourself with, I think your two other co-founders and the two other co-founders, do they have the same understanding of scale? How do you make this work with a group that don't have necessarily the same experience, that don't have the same, like I would say, the same track record? And how do you bring all of this together in order to build something that will last through time, or at least through a period of time?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly believe that we will change the AI ecosystem forever. And so I think that we have a kind of business that lasts through some kind of time. It's certainly, I don't feel an ambition to have that, but I think that it's just a part of like the kind of company that we've built. And to answer your question directly, my co-founders, Nico and Matt, have as much experience in different ways than I do. I've built a world-class team, and I think investors around the world and customers around the world recognize that. It's one of the things that people kind of bring up the most. Our team is one of the most impressive startup teams. We are purpose-built to solve this problem, not at a local scale, not at a regional scale, not at a country scale, but on the scale of like the earth. And we have, my co-founders have experience doing specifically those things in their areas. And so I think that that certainly helps. But you asked about being outside of my comfort zone. I think I've gotten so used to not being in my comfort zone that just is normal now. And I think I'm actually more wary when I feel really comfortable than when I'm in discomfort. If I feel comfortable, I think that sometimes something is wrong or something will blow up. Right. And if I'm feeling discomfort, certainly like this week, I'm feeling a whole bunch of discomfort in my company, but that's normal. And I think like that's part of, we are intentionally going towards two outcomes, right? Obviously, we don't want failure, and we are intentionally not building a lifestyle business. We're building a scale level company that's ready for acquisition or eventual IPO. And there are many, many parts of those things that just place us consistently in periods or in places of discomfort. And that's a part of running a startup day to day.
How do you get the mentorship or the support that you need in order to build a company that you're focused on that level or, that outcome specifically?
I think that as a CEO, my job is to sell people on a vision. And I think that a part of my job is to consistently, constantly grow. The French word is épanouir, to constantly kind of like better myself and become a better CEO. And I think that there are many, many different ways of doing that. For me, especially because of my background in music, I've been always kind of very comfortable with private lessons as a musician, and that's extended to private coaching as a CEO. And I brought up the selling the vision part because I think that our job as CEOs, especially for building kind of these global companies, is to seek out some of the best CEO coaches, the best startup coaches, the best advisors in the world, understand that there's like a list of about 100 that exists, and then understand that there are tens of thousands of startups that want to work with their time, and their time is not inherently scalable because they do one-on-one mentorship with CEOs like myself and like you. And our job is to sell the vision of ourselves and of our companies to those coaches to convince them that we are worth having them sell their own vision to us. Right. And, I think that there are coaches that are appropriate for different stages of our business. Like there are really great pre-seed coaches. I've worked with Eric Marcouillet, who's this incredible leader and understander of the pre-seed to seed stage. And as far as like a fundraising advisor, there are few in the world that have seen as many deals as him. And my God, he's just so smart when it comes to fundraising, decision making, and so on. And so I've been working with him for some time, and I'm thinking about bringing on another team lately to help me kind of like navigate and orient myself towards Series A. I think like working with great teams that help me as a CEO grow, I think is really important.
How do you build a team? And I mean, like not just the co-founders and stuff like that, but all of the support team that buy into the vision. So I'm guessing that, well, having been in the tech industry for a long time, I understand the need for when you're having somebody come on with your company, you're also, promoting the vision to them, selling the vision, because they need to believe, because startups are not like regular companies where they do 9 to 5 all the time, or there's a lot more to it than just building a team specific.
Yeah, I think something that I am aware of when I build teams as a Canadian is that I have been influenced and built to think locally, and that if I'm building, if I have aspirations to build one of the biggest products in the world, then I need to go and get the subject matter experts in whatever vertical that I'm building in. And so what that means is that, usually those subject matter experts are not going to be in my backyard and probably not even going to be in my country. And so I have, for many, many years now, discarded this kind of notion of needing to build in my backyard first to prove something. In this company, certainly, I have built with the best in the world, and I'm looking to hire the best in the world. And that often means, folks who are in large metropolitan cities in the United States. My co-founder is in LA. My second co-founder is in Vancouver, and he's in Vancouver because he was part of one of the 3 most well-renowned AI labs in the world. There's one in Spain, there's one in Vancouver, and there's one at MIT. So he was part of the one in Vancouver, which is why he was there. And our recent hires are people who have worked at some of the world's most well-known music industry unicorns. I don't care really where they are, so long as they're in North America. And I intentionally remind us that we are worthy of hiring the best in the world. And I think that we can do that because we've built a company that is wrapped around one of the most important issues in the world right now, when it comes to AI, at least. There are many important issues outside of AI. And in AI, getting people paid really gets people fired up. And so I think it would be probably be a lot harder if I was building a software as a service to count my radishes. Maybe because, there are less people that love thinking about radishes at scale. But also to a certain extent, the idea that we went to solve was big like this by design. And that helps to attract team. It helps to attract coaches. The vision that we created as a founding team kind of leads to all of those things.
Was there anything like any limiting belief that came up? You've always built things globally for for years, but this one is, I feel, is a step further than everything that you've built before.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did you have to let go of, or what did you have to, put into your mind, or how did the shift happen?
Mm. I think at the end of my last company, which was 6.5, 7 years ago now, I had hit a wall, both professionally and personally. And I think that I needed to do a lot of work on myself to kind of overcome that wall. And I'm really proud of that work that I've put in. So I think the short answer is that therapy helped a lot to kind of scale, like to get over that hump. And I found all of these delightful benefits on the other side. I'm still obviously like deep in my journey. And I've also walked a long way on the path of the healing road, right? And I think that those things really helped me be able to genuinely, authentically state a vision, find a vision that matters, and then articulate it and get people fired up around it. I think that without kind of tending to myself first and making, like working through the things that I needed to heal, working through those things that I needed to heal, I think that I wouldn't have been able to be the CEO of this company and be an equal and active participant in upholding the vision.
I think that's pretty amazing. I think that's. What do you do when little things creep up?
We tend to address them very bluntly and quickly in our team. I think we have this way of being as a company of addressing small issues when they come up and making sure that we're heard. In fact, I was just on a huddle. I was almost late because I was just on a huddle with an engineer who, felt really comfortable firing up kind of a quick huddle about 4 kind of core issues that he saw that he thought were easy to address early that would make us better and stronger as a team as a whole, which I found really, really great. So
You mean
I
from a
think
human point of view or from a technical point of view?
both.
Wow. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, both. In fact, I think 3 were human, 1 was engineering. 3 were human. Yeah, 3 were human, 1 was engineering. I think that we've created this way of being at our company where people intuitively understand that they're going to be heard when they have thoughts. And I feel the same way about my team. They're going to hear me when I have thoughts, and they're not going to hear me because I am CEO. Obviously, that has something to do with it, but I think they're going to hear me because we've created a space where these exchanges of ideas are possible. And I think that that's possible because we've hired some of the best people in the world. And so we're surrounded by experts. We're surrounded by people who are really good at what they do.
As a team member on your team, was I already sold on this idea that AI would impact the world and music and all of different mediums in terms of attribution before they got on? Or do most of them were sold on it with time?
I think partly with time, because most people don't even know that this is possible. And so the world's really starting to catch up, and it's catching up very quickly. I think that part of it, I think that the team is unified by our vision and wakes up every day because of the team, because of who we are. And we unified people through our vision. Some of them were sold within a few minutes, and some of them were sold after they did technical diligence and realized, oh my God, you really have something here. You've actually built this. And so there are varying degrees of prove it to me that existed. Then I think people stick around specifically because we have such a strong, explicitly stated way of being, like Notion area that really, outline in very specific and intentional detail, who are we as a team? How do we communicate? What are the ways that are appropriate and what are the ways that are not appropriate? And I think early stage startups probably think that this is something that some maybe think that this is something that needs to be done later. And I actually think that this was one of the most important first documents that we wrote, and we update it all the time.
Did you, for your team, like, did you use like anything like predictive index or anything like that, all kinds of things like that? But or is it just an organic flow through getting to know each other through conversations and actually hard topics probably and maybe hard conversations as well?
Are you talking about the creation of that kind of like the ways of beings of our company, or are you just talking about how we gelled as a team?
As you gel as a team.
Yeah, I think that, well, first we use our ways of being document as a required reading material that people need to sign when they join our company. And by signing, the implication is that they've read kind of who we are. And then we just put that in practice. We talk a lot about the whys of things in our company, like why are we doing X and why are we doing Y? And we just practice that on a regular basis. And I think that we strengthen process. And when we strengthen process, we celebrate the people who brought up, the failure in the process and their solution to it. I think like a lot of conversation, we don't use indexes or exercises or frameworks yet with regards to kind of, team cohesion and team communication. It is mostly organic. And I'm sure that there are frameworks that could really help us here. We just haven't gotten around to it.
We're just going to come to a close here. And before I close, my last question would be to you is that when you first got into this venture specifically, because you had many, what didn't you know, like that was a surprise to learn as you went through the process?
I've never been in a space moving so quickly. And I think that there are likely many business owners that are doing that. I was on a call with another engineer about 2 hours ago, and he was telling me how today they generated 30,000 lines of code that is production ready. 30,000 lines of code.
Just to put people in context, before, how much time would that have taken?
Weeks. Production ready, probably a couple of months. Maybe like,
and everything, right?
I don't know, 30, 40, like, let's call it like 30,000 lines of code. Let's call that like between 2 and 4 sprints. And that's assuming that each sprint is 1 week. So 2 to 4 weeks minimum. Probably actually 4 to 6. And he did that today. 30,000 lines of code. We of course heavily invest in AI systems, and we have what I think are some of the better AI users in the world, who are a part of our team. And I'm not prepared for this world. I don't think they are either. And like, YOLO, this is the world we live in. So let's go. But like, I'm not prepared, like at all.
Well, I think that most people don't even. I think we don't even have the imagination to imagine what it could be.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Any last word, Mr. Power?
No, I'm just so happy to be here.